Hello, I'm John Richards, and I have with me one of the great physicists stroke cosmologists in the world, Lawrence Krauss. How the devil are you, Lawrence?
Hi there, nice to see you.
Now, Lawrence is the founder of the Origins Project Foundation. There's a website, a YouTube channel, podcasting, Facebook site. Tell us about it, Lawrence.
Well, the Origins Project is designed really to address the fact that almost all major areas of scholarship, from science through the humanities, in fact, deal with questions of origins. And one of the reasons I think that myth and superstition have become so prevalent is that science has become divorced from culture in much of the world. And the idea of the Origins Project is to start looking at these questions and try and push the forefronts of knowledge.
Right.
We do that by having public events and by sponsoring travel experiences. We just came back from the Mekong with Richard Dawkins and Richard Somerville, who's a climate scientist, looking at issues obviously relevant to the Mekong and Vietnam of climate and biology. We're going to have an upcoming trip to Greenland, which is an area sort of like the canary in the coal mine with climate change. And we'll have Ian McEwan, who's a writer, and was actually involved as a judge in the Anti-theism conference, and he's a writer who's looked at questions of science, of not just climate change but artificial intelligence. We'll also have Ray Dolan, who's a well-known neuroscientist. So the idea is to bring people together with the opportunity to spend time with these people, or attend a public event where we have provocative discussions, which we'll have this year. Later on this year, we'll have, for example, Noam Chomsky and Jeffrey Sachs talking about the economics and politics of climate change. We'll look at origins of life, origins of the universe. So these questions, which really are foundational and which science can address and rational thinking can address, but too often ideology and religion get in the way.
Yes, the religious often think that they've already solved these problems, don't they?
Often, well, because they often want to sort of answer questions before the questions have even been asked.
They like a bit of certainty. Now, I'm very pleased to let you know that Noam Chomsky has agreed to be interviewed by me. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's great. Great. Noam's incredible. Noam is a hero of mine, a friend of mine as well. And certainly a wonderful example for anyone who wants to be both vigorous and rational. And he's brilliant.
Incredible man. Yeah. So your website is tickering along at the bottom here.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, if you're interested, for example, in the Greenland trip, you go to that website, or seeing what we're doing as our events come up. The trip after, by the way, the trip after Greenland will be the Galapagos, which is an area of great importance for evolution. And that'll be in summer of 2021. The Greenland trip is in September, October, in time to see the Northern Lights as well. And our first public events will probably be in September of 2020 in Phoenix, but they'll be filmed and broadcast live on the web. The podcast, of course, is continuing to go on, and I'm very excited. We've already had among the most diverse and amazing group of guests, from, on the one hand, Ricky Gervais, to, in fact, Chomsky and Nobel Prize winning scientists, and we've got an amazing set of people coming up. I want to keep that as a surprise, but stay tuned. Also, once a month, I do a segment called Science Matters, where I try and talk about science in the news. Too often, we just don't see. Science is a fascinating interest to everyone, from my experience, and I just talk about those questions in a way that perhaps longer than you'd ever get to hear on a regular TV program. The science behind the news and the reaction to that has been really positive. So I really enjoy doing that.
Great. Well, we're very pleased that you agreed to be a speaker at our Anti-theism International Convention.
I'm looking forward to it. It looks like it'll be a great event. I'm really looking forward to being there.
It should be. We've got speakers coming from several different countries, and attendees have signed up from Norway, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Romania, apart from the UK and the USA. And I've probably missed them out, but it's going to be amazing. Brilliant.
It'll be fun. I'm looking
Now,
forward.
we've asked you to speak on the subject of trying to get our government to adopt evidence-led policy making. It's a tall order, I know, but
It is.
experience campaigning on this, I think.
Well, so, bringing science should be the basis of public policy. Rational thinking and experience. I mean, using empirical evidence and acting rationally, which is really the basis of science, in my opinion, should be the basis of public policy. And I've been dealing with that for many, many years in this country, which we have a long experience of pseudoscience and ignoring science and censoring science. I actually got involved in it, trying to convince the Ohio Board of Education more than 20 years ago to not get rid of evolution in high schools. That's probably where I began my public hat of campaigning. And even though I wasn't a biologist, this was an attack on science. And because, evolution is the basis of modern biology, and it was important not to dilute it or get rid of it in high schools. And so in my own state of Ohio, I got involved speaking and then eventually a public event with the school board members. But then I moved to more broadly, and anytime sort of science issues have been under attack, I've been trying to interact with governments. Various times I've actually talked to Congress people. I've testified before Congress with Buzz Aldrin on the future of space exploration, but also lobbied, basically provided lectures for the National Academy of Sciences, also the Union of Concerned Scientists, the American Physical Society, and then the other area where I was active for a long time was something called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which was developed right after the Second World War by Manhattan Project scientists to try and warn the world about the dangers of nuclear weapons and try and bring that information to the public. And for almost a dozen years, I was chairman of that organization.
Wow.
And the idea, again, through that organization was to try and speak to legislators, speak to people in government. Because right now, of course, science has been under attack in the United States and, unfortunately, in England and other places where people try and basically use ideology to censor the results of science. And science isn't liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican. Science is just there to help make our lives better and to help us make rational decisions about the future. And I think it's incredibly important to confront nonsense when it's nonsense. And those are the issues I'll probably speak about at the meeting.
We'll want to hear you. This is the very reason we've organized this event, because England seems to have gone backwards over my lifetime. Whereas it was once upon a time not a very religious country, now we've got more religion coming in.
I think, and I think the reason to that gets in the way is that I mean, to be fair, there are many people who call themselves religious where religion doesn't get in the way of their actions or acting rationally. It's when it does that's the problem. When people are blinded by preconceptions that get in the way of that. In fact, I had a dialogue once with Noam Chomsky, since we've spoken about him, where he says he doesn't care what people think, it's what they do that matters. And I agree with him, but it's what you think affects what you do. And that's when there's a problem, when religion gets in the way of rational action when it comes to even the question of, say, gay marriage and or now climate change. That's when there's a problem.
People can do funny things under the influence of a belief.
Yeah, exactly. And those beliefs can come from many causes, but religious superstition is certainly one.
Yes. We've even got a branch of Answers in Genesis in Brighton now. It's amazing.
I can't wait to see Brighton, which I've heard good things about.
Queen Victoria's favourite resort. Actually, it was the first. The idea of going to the seaside began with her. Anyway, I just want to stop your website address going past and start ours. There we go. Because I want to announce that we not only give recognition to living atheists by presenting awards, but we also pay homage to atheists who have sadly passed on. And this year we are commemorating Christopher Hitchens. one of your personal friends, I believe.
Yeah, Christopher was a friend of mine, and I'm always, I was when he was alive, just as now. I kind of was amazed that I got to be a friend of Christopher's, and talked to him about science, in fact. But he was a remarkable man, one of the most remarkable people I've ever known.
Yeah.
And I got to know him in the years before he died, and was with him shortly before he died, and it was a loss for the world. And I was fortunate enough that his widow asked me to speak at his memorial service. I was incredibly honored to do that. Christopher, I used to say whenever I left Christopher's house that I wanted to grow up and be an intellectual, because I was he read so widely and was interested in so many things and so knowledgeable. And we didn't agree on everything, but in fact, the way I first got to know Christopher was actually writing him after his book God Is Not Great, and telling him how wonderful it was, and then discovering to my shock and surprise that he was a fan of my writing and my work.
Yeah.
And
What a privilege.
then we got together and became good friends. And as I say, every time I was there, he asked me questions of science, because here was a consummate humanist, journalist, but like any individual who's curious, he didn't somehow separate science from the rest of the world, and we had fascinating discussions about that. I'm incredibly happy that this is honoring Christopher, because it was a loss for the world when he died.
Absolutely, yes. Well, we're having a competition to paint a portrait of him, which will be auctioned for a charity, and you can vote for, or you can nominate, some of your favorite atheists for up to 8 categories. You can see our website on the screen now. And the final thing I want to say is that the early bird ticket prices end on Friday, 31st of January. So if you don't get them before then, you pay more. Lawrence, I can't wait to meet you in person and to hear you speak at our event. Thanks very much for this interview, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks. It's been great to be with you virtually.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.